Volume 4, Healing and the Mind World by Pir Hazrat Inayat Khan. Part 1, Health. 5. Element breaths. This does not mean that the fact of germs should altogether be ignored, for it is not possible to ignore something which you see. Besides, it does not mean that the discovery of microbes has not been of use to the physicians, enabling them to attend better to the patient. Yet at the same time one can be too sensitive to germs, one can exaggerate the idea of germs, making the idea more than the reality. But one person will be susceptible to those germs and tend to be their victim, while another person assimilates those germs and thus destroys them. In other words, the one is destroyed by germs and the other destroys them. It is said that contagious diseases are contracted by the microbes going from one person to another, in the breath, in the air, in everything, but it is not always the microbes, it is very often the impression. When a person has seen that his friend has caught a cold and has thought, "I fear I shall catch it," he has certainly caught the disease, because he has been afraid and has been impressed by it, he has caught it. It is not always necessary that the germs of the cold should have gone from one person to another by way of the breath. The impression that a person has received can create them, for behind the whole of creation there is that power. We often see that the more a person is afraid of a thing, the more he is pursued by it, for unconsciously he concentrates upon it. There are germs and impurities, but there are also elements to purify them. Those 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, as spoken of by the mystics, do not only compose germs, but can also destroy them. If one only knew how one could make use of those 5 elements to purify one's body with them and also one's mind. As there is need of sun and water for plants to grow, so there is need of the 5 elements for a person to keep in perfect health. These 5 elements he breathes according to his capacity of breath. But by breath every person does not attract the same properties, for everyone attracts from the breath elements according to his particular constitution. One attracts more fire element in his breath, another more water element, and a third attracts more earth element. Sometimes one receives an element which one does not require. Besides, the sun currents have a greater healing power than anything else. A person who knows how to breathe perfectly, who is attracting sun currents into his body, can keep the body free from every kind of impurity. No microbes of destruction can exist if the sun currents can touch every part of the body which is within, and that is done by the breath. The places of the earth which are hidden from the sun, which are not touched by the air, become damp, several little lives are created there, germs of destruction are born, and the air in that place becomes dense. If this is true, then the body also needs the sun and air. The lungs, intestines, and veins and tubes of the body all need the sun and the air, and these are taken in by means of perfect breathing, and even the mind derives benefit from this. For the mind too is composed of 5 elements, the elements in their finest condition. Rest and repose as well as action and movement must have a certain balance, a certain rhythm. If there is no balance between activity and repose, then the breath is not secure either. Our great mistake is that with every little complaint the first thing we think of is the doctor. We never stop to think, what has been the cause in myself? Have I been too active, too lazy? Have I not been careful about my diet, about my sleep? Have I not breathed in all the elements which are necessary to keep this mechanism of body and mind going? Frightened by every illness, a man first runs to the doctor. As long as the illness has not appeared before him, he does not mind if it is growing inwardly without his having noticed it. It may continue to grow for a long time. For years the man, absorbed in his outer activities, never thinks that he is giving a home to his worst enemy in his body. Thus very often illness is caused by negligence. Then there are others who become too careful. They think of nothing else except their illness. The first question before them is, "How shall I get well?" Pondering upon their illness, they give a kind of fuel to that fire of illness from their thoughts, keeping it burning. They do not know that by their unconscious effort the illness is kept alive. In order to keep the health in perfect order, one must keep a balance between body and mind, between activity and repose, and it is the psychological outlook on one's health which helps more than any medicines. I remember going to see a patient who had been suffering from an illness for more than 20 years and had lost every hope of getting better. Several physicians had been consulted, many different treatments had been tried. I told her a simple thing to do. I did not teach any special practices, but just an ordinary little thing to do in the morning and in the evening, and to the great surprise of those at home, she began to move her hands and legs, which had been thought impossible, and this gave them great hope, that a patient who had been so long in bed could do this, and to her too it was a great surprise. I went to see them after a few days and asked them, "How is the patient progressing?" They said, "She is progressing very well. We could never have believed that she could move her hands and legs. It is the most wonderful thing." But we cannot make her believe that now after 20 years of suffering she can ever be well again. This illness has made such an impression upon her that she thinks that it is natural for her, and that to be well is a dream, an unreality. This gave me the idea that when a person lives in a certain condition for a long, long time, that condition becomes his friend unconsciously. He does not know it, he may think that he wants to get out of it, yet there is some part of his being that is holding his illness just the same. One day, remembering this peculiarity of human nature, I asked someone who was brought to me to be cured of an obsession how long she had had this obsession. She explained to me how horrible the obsession was, how terrible life was for her. I listened to it for half an hour, everything that she said against the obsession, but recollecting this amusing aspect of human nature, I asked her, "You do not really mean to say that you want to get rid of that spirit?" "If I had this spirit, I would keep it. After all these years that you have had it, it seems unjust and very cruel to this spirit. If this spirit had not cared for you, it would not have stayed with you all these years. In this world, is it easy for a person to remain so long with one? This spirit is most faithful." Then she said, "I do not really want to get rid of it." I was very much amused to see how this person wanted sympathy and help, but did not want to give up the spirit. It was not the spirit that was obsessing this person, but the person was obsessing the spirit. Psychic natures are more liable to illness, as they are more susceptible to gross vibrations, and especially those inclined to spiritualistic seances. Their bodies become so susceptible to any kind of illness, also to obsessions, that in reality they prepare themselves to welcome, in their own spirit, any other spirit.